Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'm going to discuss another Boris Johnson climb down, but how also his concession to his backbench MPs does absolutely nothing to achieve his political objectives and still dooms us to not getting a trade deal with either the EU, which some people don't care about, apparently, or the US, which I think everyone cares about. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, first of all, we need to think about why it is that Conservative MPs are getting ready to vote against Boris Johnson's internal market bill in its current form. The official response is, well, the reason is it breaks international law by breaching a treaty that we signed up to freely, and the UK should not break treaties. In reality, that is not the reason at all. If it were the reason, then Johnson's compromise would not be placating the rebels in his party. The real reason is that the breach of the law is not being covered up. The Justice Secretary, a man considered to have been honourable before this whole sorry affair, I think people need to reevaluate that now, has said two things to try and justify his decision not to resign. Because when it's been put to him time and time again, well, you need to resign here, you're breaking the ministerial code. The first is that he said he would resign if the government broke the law in a way that he found unacceptable. As if there's an acceptable way to break the law if you are supposed to be upholding the law for the so-called party of law and order. Then more recently, he said that he would resign if the government broke the law in a way that can't be fudged. So what he's saying here is that it's fine to break the law as long as you can claim that you are not breaking the law. And this is what it's clearly about for those rebels in the parties as well, because it's not the law breaking. It's the fact that they have to admit to breaking the law. The fact that when constituents say to them, you're supporting a bill that breaks the law, they can't turn around and go, no, we're not. That's all they want to be able to do. To be able to, when I eventually get my response from the MP, which is taking a lot longer than it normally does, they want to be able to say, I think you'll find we're not going to be breaking the law after all. I will write back, I know different. That's all there is to it. It's the admission to breaking the law that they can't stomach, not the law breaking itself. If only they can be allowed to claim that they aren't breaking the law, they'll happily vote for this oath-breaking rubbish. So, next, the concession. How does the concession allow Conservative MPs to avoid looking like they're breaking the law? So it seems to be based on the Neil Amendment. So what I'm hearing is reports, and at the time at which I'm doing this, it hasn't been voted for yet. So we do not yet know. But it's believed the government have come to an agreement with their backbenchers, the rebels. Now, what it means is this amendment would mean that the government can't have the power to trigger the offending clauses in the bill. They would need a specific vote in Parliament to authorise it. So those clauses would sort of be there, but if the government wanted to trigger them, they'd have to go to Parliament and say, we wish to trigger this clause, we wish to do it in this way for this purpose. And then Parliament would yay or nay it. So what they're trying to say is that the bill, and this has been, very pervasive in this conversation, in this debate. What they're trying to say is the bill itself doesn't break the law. The bill doesn't break the law. But there are clauses which, if triggered, would break the law. And what this amendment means is that those clauses cannot be triggered by the government unilaterally. It would have to go back to Parliament and have their specific approval. Now, even if you were to accept that, that would still mean that the bill allows us to break the law, to break a treaty. However, this version of events is not true, and is certainly not being put forward by legal experts. In fact, legal experts have made it clear that the bill itself breaks international law, and even with this amendment, would still breach international law. It doesn't matter whether or not you trigger the clauses. It represents a unilateral rewriting of an international treaty. And like I keep saying, imagine the shoe on the other foot. Imagine what the Brexiteers would be saying if the EU chose to unilaterally change part of the agreement. They'd throw a fit. Now, this is the reason as well, by the way, that Lord Keane QC, I talked about a bit earlier, resigned from the government yesterday. At the time, when the government were being asked, oh, here, Keane's resigned, what have you got to say about that then? They wouldn't say anything. They were keeping stum. And the reports were suggesting that Boris Johnson was trying to persuade Keane to stay on. Now, it seems likely that he'll have been trying to persuade him with talk of this compromise. Oh, it's all right, I'm going to adopt this compromise and, that'll make it all right, yeah? To which Keane will surely have said, no, that doesn't make it all right, because this amendment does not stop the bill being a breach of international law. So what they're effectively trying to do is this, just to try and put it in the terms that they want to understand it. So the offending clause, clauses really, allows the government, with Parliament's approval, if they amend it in this way, to fail to comply with the Northern Ireland Protocol. Now, failure to comply with the Northern Ireland Protocol would be a breach of the Good Friday Agreement, because it would necessitate a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. In other words, inside Ireland, as opposed to be between Ireland and Great Britain. Now, the UK under those circumstances would absolutely seek to blame the EU for it, but that will only work domestically. The reality is that every other government on earth, including the other governments inside the UK, know who would be at fault. And the same would apply to international courts when it comes to that as well. So the argument is being used that although the bill allows the UK to not comply with the Northern Ireland Protocol, that doesn't automatically mean that we have to not comply. We could still choose to comply and everything will be fine. But the treaty says we have to comply. So if all of a sudden we change the legal situation so that we don't have to comply, then we've changed the treaty. And that is what makes it a breach. In addition, we could fail to comply at any time without warning. And this is why other governments are taking a dim view of this. In addition, we could look at it like this. So let's take it from the United States' point of view. Okay, a country that, everyone on both sides of the Brexit debate would like us to have a fruitful relationship with when Trump's gone, So from their point of view, they're looking at this. So we're trying to say, look, we're going from a situation where the government can just unilaterally trigger this clause to where Parliament needs to trigger it. But the United States looks at it from thousands of miles across the sea and says, well, all you're really doing is changing the bill from the UK gets to break this treaty to the UK breaks this treaty. They don't care about the distinction between government and Parliament. It's still the UK. It's still UK authorities. Nothing changes from the international perspective. This compromise changes nothing. So as things stand, the situation is as follows. 1. Boris Johnson has had to carry out another humiliating climb down. He could have seen the writing on the wall much earlier and agreed to the amendment before pushing so hard against it, and he would not have lost face in his party. It is another failure to properly take account of the feeling of his own MPs, and that failure is going to be another nail in his political career coffin. 2. By adopting the amendment, the government must be convinced that they have won over the rebels in the party. Now, as I say, there's not been a vote on this at the point at which I'm doing this, but I'm going to work on the assumption that this compromise therefore will be enough to get the bill through the House of Commons. 3. But it still represents a breach of the law, and this still makes it unlikely to pass through the House of Lords. Some of them may go, we get to say that it's not illegal now. But the majority of them know full well that it is, and also they know how damaging this is diplomatically overseas, including to America. So that means the Lords are very likely to block it, in which case Johnson will just blame them for the mess, and we end up with another acrimonious Brexiteer tirade against another British institution. But 4, if the Lords don't block it, and it becomes law in this country, then the EU and the US will hold the UK responsible for a breach of the treaty. They will refuse to deal with us, and one or both may even go to an international court to apply sanctions. It'd be particularly embarrassing if the United States did this. And 5, Well, we can't manage without a US or an EU trade deal. We especially can't manage if either of them decides to apply extra tariffs on goods by way of punishment. So the compromise doesn't stop the international community coming down on us like a ton of bricks. And domestically is actually worse, because the amendment doesn't just state that Parliament has to vote to trigger this clause. There's another little sting in the tail. It also means that if there's any businesses in Britain harmed by this bill, they're not allowed to go to court to seek a legal challenge. It's removing the rights of British businesses to seek a legal review of what the government are doing to them. And I'll keep reminding people, I've not seen a single person be able to explain even one benefit of this bill to Boris Johnson. The best that can be said is that it keeps the hardline Brexiteers in his party on his side for a bit longer, but it also makes food and medicine shortages more likely and more acute this winter. And it also means that more businesses will face an existential threat from a no-deal Brexit if the EU decide not to be kind. Because remember, our vital service sector, which is worth way more than our trading goods, gets next to no protection from World Trade Organization terms. They will be reliant upon EU and US goodwill, to help tide them over for a little bit while we negotiate a proper deal. So in order to be able to operate next year, because remember, we're not just leaving on WTO terms for the EU, the United States as well. We haven't got an agreement with them, in case people haven't noticed. So without those agreements, then our businesses will need to operate on a sort of goodwill from them. If that goodwill has evaporated in the political heat by then. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.